frustrating homeschool can be for parents, trying to look after the kids, trying to get them sit down, trying to do their work. That's if some work has been provided for them. Those feelings that we know, the claims that teachers are simply just registering the kids and then reading stories over Zoom. And it feels like some parents feel like their children are being shortchanged.
Well, these kind of comments and responses have been coming as children's charity, the NSPCC, warned that the mental health effects of the pandemic are taking a huge toll on children, with concerns about loneliness, low self-esteem and depression. Well, this morning, our homeschooling panel are here to help you if you're struggling with the children at home and offer some advice. Yeah,
we've been joined by child psychologist Laverne Antrobus, head teacher of Woodcote High School in Croydon, Paul Munday-Castle, and Kerry Whelpdale, who is a vlogger and a mum of two. Good to see you all this morning. I'm going to power on, if I may, because we've had so many questions. Lots of people are looking for some advice and some help. Laverne, if we can start with you. This one has come from one of our viewers. It's Holly on Twitter. My daughter is in year 4 and is remote learning. I'm struggling to help her as I am a bit dyslexic. How can I best go about helping her?
Well, I think start the day trying to look at the tasks that are ahead, making sure that, you've got everything prepared. I think try not to be too worried about your own skills and learn alongside your child and follow their lead. Actually, the school day isn't as sort of lengthy as we like to believe. There are lots of gaps, so make sure you mix things up. Use your talents and skills to bring whatever you can to whatever creative writing perhaps is needed. Fire up her imagination, but don't get too bogged down in your own difficulties. And I would always say, follow your child's lead. If anything seems unclear, then schools are still there to help you and to help you get through this.
What about if you haven't got the skills that you're saying, the skills? There's one from parents here saying, I'm dyslexic.
Yeah, that's what Holly just said.
Yeah, and what do you do? Because things like creative writing is very hard, isn't it?
I think it is. I think you're trying to maximise what you can do without putting yourself under too much stress. And, if the writing and getting things down on paper in that way isn't your skill set, then go for other things. I'm sure that your child will be able to sort of power through themselves. And if it means that you're doing some drawings or you're finding a bit of the background information they need, then I think that's really, really helpful and important.
This is one that's lots of people are talking about, is the length of time it's taking, Laverne. Liz says, I'm really struggling with homeschooling my 7-year-old son. I work from home as well. I also look after a 3-year-old. There's a lot of pressure from work and school. Some nights I don't finish teaching until 8 at night. What can she do to try and make things a bit more efficient, try and help in some way, so at least her day and the children's day finishes at a more reasonable time?
I'm all about chunking the day up and making sure there are gaps. I go into schools, I can see that, children aren't learning from 9 until 3:30. There are lots of points where there are breaks. We've learnt a lot through lockdown. This isn't the first time we've been in the homeschooling situation. Try and think about what you've learnt about your child's ability, what they like doing in the free time that you can give them so that you can get a bit of time for yourself. But certainly, please don't find yourself having to homeschool past 3:30. The afternoons really should be more about creative time, time where they do something a bit more relaxing. So chunking so that you can all have bits of time during the day when you're doing the things you need to do, but actually making sure there's a stop point at the end, not working until, late in the evening.
OK, Paul Munday-Castle has said, can children really be expected to learn that much? Because it's very difficult, isn't it? Because, we are not experts at teaching. We can't do very much in terms of teaching, can we, Paul? So, what can we really expect our children to do?
I'll start by saying everybody should remain positive. Teaching is a profession. It takes 5 years to become a decent teacher. So all the families out there who are working very, very hard in terms of homeschooling, just pat yourself on the back. And you are doing a good job, even if it doesn't feel like that sometimes. I think it is important you contact your school and you make sure you are in constant communication. I know the previous question was about a parent having dyslexia. Well, if you've got dyslexia yourself, then it is important you are communicating with your SENCO at your current school. I've got a fantastic Senko Woodcote High School, Alison King, and she's well supported. So if you were in my school struggling with SEN issues, I think it is important you speak to the Senko. And I think, yes, we do understand there will be recovery when they come back to school, and schools will plan for that recovery. But do plough on and contact the school if you're having particular problems.
It's a pretty similar question from Ewan and from Laura on Twitter about concentration. Ewan says, as a student, it can be really hard to get on with the work that often seems boring and monotonous. Any tips for students that are struggling to stay focused? And Laura's point is she's got 2 kids homeschooling. The youngest is 11. He loses interest very easily, becomes distracted. How can they keep that focus? How can Laura help her 11-year-old stay involved with the task?
I think it is important we chunk up the work, because the timetable doesn't work for everybody in exactly the same way. So I think it is important you sort of plan the day ahead and you build in the breaks. I would say the first thing parents should do is build a timetable with their child so that you work on that timetable together. Build in rewards into that timetable where you might want to take a 15-minute break, where you might want to go for a walk around the house or do some stretching exercises. But when they start to feel, I've done enough, I can't do any more, then it's a good time to sort of take a creative break.
Good tip. Now, Kerry, we've got you here as well. This one is about single mums, essentially. Single mum of 4 girls struggling to give one-to-one attention to all her 4 children, presumably very different ages. And this sometimes is added to if it's a single mum that's working, because even though I know, Laura, you were saying that you can divide up your day, you can't always, because sometimes your day it's exactly the same as a school day. Your boss needs you at 9, the school needs you online at 9. So how do you make it work and split yourself in so many different sections?
Well, I'm not a single mum, so I can't comment on that. And I can't imagine what it must be like to not have that support at home, especially, like she said, with 4 different things that you're trying to teach the kids. I mean, my husband's here to help me, but we still have to try and fit in our work. And it's so difficult. So I can't imagine what it must be like for those people who are solo homeschooling their kids and have to also fit in their work. I just don't think it's possible. I know my work suffered since homeschooling's begun, and that is, like I said, with my husband here to help me as well. So I don't know, maybe I think if you, like everyone else said, if you chunk it up and you say this half an hour I'll be with this child, this next half an hour I'll be with this child. Google has been my favourite friend since homeschooling's begun, because I don't know half the stuff my kids are learning right now.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Just one last thing.
People learn together, which actually they like.
Which I think is what Laverne said as well, wasn't it? I think one last thing, and this is from Susan, mum guilt is a really big thing. The amount of times she's had to say to her kids, Mummy can't, I'm working. Can you give anybody some ideas of how they can assuage that mum guilt, Kerry?
Oh, absolutely. Times I've shouted at my kids and then I feel so guilty that I've shouted at them because I'm trying to do a million things. I don't have my laptop. The kids have got my laptop, so I can't do my work. But I just think you need to give yourself a bit of a break. You need to understand that you're not a teacher and that your kids might go back to school knowing less than they would have done if they were at school at this time. But that's okay. And you just need to say to yourself, you know, one day at a time. Weekends, we get so excited because we don't even open anything to do with any kind of work, and I think that's so important to have your downtime and so much fun time with your kids as well.
Celebration on the weekends. Well, look, we appreciate you getting through that. Thank you for joining us this morning, Paul, Laverne, and also Kerry as well.